Is Andrea. There we go. There's the recording in progress. So my name is Andrea Heberlein, and I really want to welcome everybody here to the joint funding presentation and really thank Deb and her team for being agile and switching to this virtual format to save us, not only that valuable travel time, but also much needed warmth on such a frigid January morning. I think we're at 17 degrees, so burr. But it is my pleasure to serve as the chair for the Lancaster County Homelessness Coalition Steering Committee, along with Craig Walt, who serves as our vice chair. And for my many years in the past with United Way of Lancaster County, I have a deep familiarity with the Homelessness Coalition and the evolution of this important work. I certainly remember when this was not a joint funding process and all the work that went into streamlining this important source of resources for many of the agencies in the room today. I was really thinking that innovative thinking, collaboration, cooperation, compromise, and even embracing a spirit of agility and ambiguity that went into the work of creating that joint funding process really speaks to the admirable mindset of the folks that are in the virtual room with us today. You all recognize that no one agency, coalition, or funder can do this challenging work alone. So I really do believe it's the spirit of collaboration and working together that results in concrete outcomes for individuals and families experiencing homelessness. I'd also like you to know that Deb and her team work really hard to keep the steering committee informed and engaged. And so on behalf of the steering committee, I really want to thank all of you very, very much for your dedication and hard work. Please know that we truly admire and respect and appreciate your efforts. And I hope you find this presentation today to be informative. And I know that you are in good hands with Deb and her team. And so if you would not mind, as you are kind of getting yourself prepared to listen and learn, if you could please put your name and organization in the chat, that will serve as a good record for who's joining us today. And with that, I will hand it over to Deb.
Thank you, Andrea. Hey, Deb, sorry.
Yes, hello, everybody. I just went ahead and shared my screen. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Thank you very much. So we are encountering some bandwidth issues. So we're going to ask everybody to mute and to go off camera unless you are speaking. We hope that there will be no ongoing issues that are going to happen here today. And we want to thank you all for pivoting to a virtual meeting in light of the weather. Thanks so much, Andrea. We really appreciate you starting us off here this morning, and value all the work that the steering committee is doing. And we value all the work that you and your agencies here that are attending are doing to help keep people warm, safe, and dry. We want to start off here with our overview presentation for our joint funding homelessness services grant. I'm going to also keep an eye on the waiting room, and Beth will keep an eye on the chat. So if there's any questions, we will have a time at the end for some Q&A. But we want to go ahead and get started with our agenda. We will dive deep into the overview, any kind of questions that you might have at the end, and then allow a time for individuals to share about agency updates. So really want to do that within the next hour and cover all of this. Joint funding might be familiar to many of you. But we also wanted to give you this year more comprehensive document that lines up with our joint funding application. So you should have received by now in your email, you should have received our joint funding overview packet. And that is a complimentary guide to the joint funding application this year. Now I'm going to be putting into the chat here the connect to the overview packet that's up on our website. And actually, I'm going to ask Beth to do that because it looks like I'm not able to get it to everybody in the chat. So that companion guide is hand in hand. And today, as we go through this presentation, we're going to only be scratching the surface because the overview packet has it written down in more specificity for you as you prepare for the joint funding. Now, everybody knows that as part of the coalition, what our mission and vision is all about. And what we want to make sure is that is always in the forefront of our mind as we are collaborating together, as we are working through the services throughout the county, is that we want to make sure we have an eye on what our purpose is and to be able to ensure that as many people getting the help that is needed and walking alongside who are experiencing homelessness and at risk of homelessness. And we're doing that together. And we trust that our actions over the last couple of years are demonstrating that collaborative cohesiveness. We know that system work takes a long time, but together we are going step by step. And it's been bumpy along the way, but we continue to have the fortitude in moving forward. And we are doing that as a coalition, as 50+ partners that are engaged and involved. And we are delighted to increase those numbers in meaningful relationships to be able to meet the need. So that work is so important in what we're doing.
Hi, everyone. Jody Heinrich, Grants Manager here at the O4C. I just wanted to talk briefly to you guys about some of the eligible programs that we have traditionally funded in this joint funding opportunity. Coordinated entry, which provides, a single point of entry and referrals into the homelessness system. Street outreach, seeking to connect with people who are experiencing literal homelessness on the street, and providing them information, basic resource and connections. Emergency shelter and winter shelter, providing a safe, warm, dry place to sleep. Day center, to provide a indoor area to connect with resources. A lot of housing programs, crisis housing, short-term housing through Pathways, which is a rapid rehousing project, and long-term housing supports like permanent supportive housing. Prevention, trying to connect with households when they're right at the brink of eviction and are at the doorway of homelessness. And then any special projects that are related to people who are experiencing HUD-defined homelessness. Just wanted to give a shout out to some of our current partners. Deb, can you make this move? I don't know. So you guys are all in the room. Oops. We have Anchor Lancaster as a partner, the Moravian Center of Lancaster, Food Hub, Valley Youth House, Echoes, CAP, Lancaster EMS, 211, Tenfold, Lancaster LGBTQ Plus Coalition, the Dream Center in Columbia, CrossNet Ministries, the Factory Ministries, and the YWCA. I apologize if we missed anyone, but a real shout out to everybody who has provided services with our funding in the past, and we look forward to partnering with you in the future.
So today, as we look at our time together, we wanted to break it up into 4 different components. We want to first talk about what are some of the intentionalities of this fiscal year for the Homelessness Coalition. And then we wanted to move into the funding portfolio. We're just going to talk high level about the portfolio. We explained it in such detail in the overview packet that you have before you. We then want to talk about eligible program types and then the requirements for applicants. And along this little circle on our journey today, we'll talk about timeline, and we'll also talk about how we're going to be submitting those applications. And so that's how we're going to frame our time. We had an intern who put together this PowerPoint background slide for us. So you're the first that is able to see this. So we are really trusting that it's all going to work well with their animations that they have for us. So the focus areas for fiscal year 24-25, like where are we aiming as a community? Where are we going? And we had to be able to discern 3 or 4 areas that are top priority. And that's what this is about. And so as you're thinking through your application you're going to be submitting, keep in mind these are some areas that we are aiming towards this year. And it's based on data-driven decisions. It's based on anecdotal information and firsthand information from our partners. We also consult with Community Solutions and with our TA reps at HUD to be able to understand a little bit more of some of the initiatives that are happening at the higher level. And so this year, once again, we're going to have lived expertise as a fundamental focus area. And now this is not new to many of the returning partners here. You know that we have been really putting an emphasis on having individuals with lived experience in homelessness being able to be part of our boards, part of our programming as we're developing programming, but also really putting an emphasis on that client satisfaction this year. You will see that in some of the material that you're going to read about the application. The second focus area is coordinated entry. We continue to have that as a forefront, but this has been a process over the last several months as we also go into this quarter here, is to be looking at coordinated entry. How are we really serving the system well with the inflow of individuals coming and getting them through to the right resources? What's happening now looks different than what happened in 2016 and 2018 and 2020. And so we have to be flexible and adaptable as a system. And we recognize this is an area that we need to focus on. We also need to look at chronic homelessness. We see our numbers increasing. And as we continue to go into the PIC count next week, and we hope that so many of you have been signed up for the point in time count on January 24th and 25th, we need to get back to where we were back in 2015 and 2016 when we had functional zero chronic homelessness. And lastly, there's an increasing emphasis that our community has based on an increasing number of individuals that are youth that are experiencing homelessness. And that too will be a focus area again this year as we continue to garner resources into our community to address those increasing needs and to collaborate with our other agencies that are involved primarily with working with youth and addressing homelessness. So we'll go into now the funding portfolio. Jody.
All right. So this year we have a relatively smaller portfolio of funds to offer to the community due to our COVID funds being expired. We've met the deadline and the expenditure limit on those funds. So this year we're looking at having available in this joint funding $1.59 million. There's 7 funds. We have the typical continuum care funds, ESG funds, CDBG funds, HAP, homeless assistance funds, funding from support from the underway. This year, we're adding 2 new funding sources to this joint funding. One is from PHFA Home for Good, and it is particularly focused on prevention programs, as well as the Lancaster County Community Foundation's Catherine Gaith Fund that will also have a focus on community prevention funds. Yeah.
And now we want to go into our next area, and that will be eligible program types. And so I'm going to hand that off to Marjorie.
Thank you, Deb. Good morning, everyone. My name is Marjorie Schaefer, and I'm the Homeless Housing Program Coordinator for the OPC. Jody did a great job earlier about talking about the eligible funds that we have during the time of joint funding. So I want to expand on it just a little bit to make sure that we have kind of a similar language around these ideas. Street outreach is vital to our system because it's often the first touch point. Many individuals that are experiencing literal homelessness have to connect with services. Our coordinated entry system, 211 is a big part of that. It's that place where individuals can call to have a first pre-screening done before they are turned over to part of our coordinated entry system teams to connect and find out what resources may be available to them. Emergency shelter. We recognize how very vital this is, especially when we're in this time of code blue. We have places for people to get off the streets. We need more. That comes from partnership and also more funding coming into the area. Pathways case management, an opportunity to help people that are transitioning from homelessness into housing. It can walk alongside individuals, help them with that first month security deposits, as well as the first 3 to 6 months, providing case management along the way to ensure that they can sustain long-term housing. Prevention and diversion, helping people, individuals, families, before they are faced with having to lock that front door for the last time and find themselves on the street. There's limited financial assistance in this area, so we do our best to make sure those dollars stretch as far as they can across the county. Special projects for HUD-defined individuals, category 1 and 4. Well, you ask, what might be a special project? How would I know? One of the needs that we have in the county right now is for a SOAR certified individual. That's a Social Security Outreach Access and Recovery. It's an individual that can take the time to fill out the applications when people are working for SSI or SSDI. It's a vital tool. Maybe you have an idea where you could have a mobile unit that has an individual that's certified to be out in the county on the weekends, outside of the times when we have our typical coverage for outreach. Thank you for your time. I'll hand it back over to Deb.
Bear with me 1 minute. I just lost everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, I'm going to move ahead. I apologize. I'm not able to see the screen right now. I know that happened to one of us earlier as we were preparing for the meeting here. So again, just another reason that we're off camera, and that we're off camera and that we keep our technology issues to a minimum. I just want to piggyback on what Marjorie said about the last category for funding, which is just a little bit different this year. Special projects this year have been narrowed only to addressing homelessness, and that is because of our lack of funding. So just want to take note to that. We explained that a little bit in our overview packet. What's different this year is that we're blazing into a new area that we have not experienced before, and that is with this Prince Street Community Hub. Many of you have heard us talk about Prince Street and the acquisition of property back in February of last year. We are on track for Prince Street Community Hub to open up in December of this year. And it will have a host of different programs. It will have permanent supportive housing, which will be 22 units up on the second floor. It will have crisis housing, which is 9 units on the first floor with a day center, and also with a small congregate shelter for code blue situations and code red situations. Now, the reason we bring this up here today is because there's a program that's going to be impacted midstream in this next fiscal year, and that will be the day center. The day center that is anticipated at the Prince Street Hub is larger than the day centers that we fund and support right now, or that we see in the community, namely those at the Lancaster County Food Hub and at Anchor Lancaster. We know there's a need for more. And so we are having an eye on this funding source that we, through joint funding, that if you're interested in applying for a day center, we will be working with you with the anticipation of that day center moving into the Prince Street Community Hub at South Prince Street. The other programs need to be funded through other sources, which is another challenge before our team as we're looking at how we're going to be funding the entire center itself. But I do want to mention that there will be an anticipation as a community here, the Homelessness Coalition, that we will have coordinated entry that will be also available down at the Prince Street Community Hub. There will be street outreach that will be able to be meeting with individuals at the Community Hub, and that we will have partners from the city that will be having touch point places there at the Community Hub and coming in and being able to engage more and more people. So there'll be another access point in addition to the engagement that happens at the community meals and at the day centers, and that we will be able to have more of a holistic care for individuals. And so that Prince Street Hub needed to be mentioned today as we kind of profile what is happening next. So as we move forward, and again, if you have questions, please jot them down. We'll have time here at the end. We're going into our last area, and that is the applicant requirements. And so, Beth, I'm going to hand this over to you.
All right. Hi, everybody. I am Beth Dreyer-DeGood. I am administrative assistant here at the Housing and Redevelopment Authority. There we go. So there are a number of documents that we are going to ask that you upload into the Neighborly application portal. Most of them are required. So that's just a list right there. We need to have your nonprofit letter of determination. That's your 501c3 letter. We need to have a certificate of good standing, which is not something that we've had in the past, but because of other funding or funding that we have this year, we need to have that document as well. You need to comply with the Patriot Act of 2001, and that is just a document that you will download from the portal, sign, and then upload back to the portal. We need to have a non-discrimination policy uploaded, a racial equity survey that again is something that you will download, complete, and then upload back up to the portal. We need to have your organizational grievance policy. We need to have your current audited financials. The only document that's not required is the client satisfaction survey. That is optional this year. In the future, that will be a requirement, but we know that maybe not everybody has that right now. So it's optional this year. It is something that we want to look forward to requiring. And then the last two are both documents that, again, you will download, complete, sign, and then upload back into the portal. That's all of the required documents.
That's great, Beth. Thanks so much for making it streamlined for everybody. The Neighborly portal was used last year. It will continue to be used for all those that are new in applying. We will be giving TA, technical assistance, to you through how to use the Neighborly portal, get it set up and things like that. And Beth will be your contact person for that. Again, trying to find ways to make it efficient for everyone involved. Your time is important. So as we go into this, the timeline, what about the timeline, Jody?
Okay, so I'm going to, oops. I'm going to refer everybody again back to your overview packet. There's a very detailed and complete timeline for our process this year. I just wanted to highlight for you some dates that I think are important. One is today's meeting, which thank you for coming to that. And so the next deadline that we are looking at that it's going to be important will be the deadline for questions. Which will be February 15th, 2024. The link that Beth put up in the chat earlier is where you're going to find the document this year. It will be hosted on our website rather than a Google Doc. So just wanted to note that. So please use that link to look at the questions that have been asked and answered from your partner organizations in the community. You might find it helpful, you may not, but just wanted to point that out. We are hosting virtual open office hours. The links, the time, dates, and links to the actual meeting are embedded in that document. Please take note of that and use that to click in and hop in for a question. Please feel free to use that as a literal drop-in. If you have a question, hop in. It'll be hosted by myself and one of my teammates to help answer any questions that might come up while you're putting your application together. And then the last date I wanted to highlight is when applications are due. They're due on 2/20, end of day, so 4:30. And after that, we are anticipating, I know everyone always asks, well, when will you make the announcements of funding? We're anticipating to make that announcement the week of April 22nd. And as you can see, there's lots of other little steps in between, but I just wanted to highlight those for you all.
One of the things I didn't realize before joining the team here at the Office for the Coalition is that the domino effect, that the lineup of everything that goes into play with making awards for joint funding, which includes passing budgets, right? Congressional budgets, both federal government and state budgets. And so we will not be able to give to allocate funding unless we know how much is being dedicated for Lancaster County, both federal and state. And so there's a lot of variables at play here. Some of you may remember the day that we a letter or announcement was given where it said it was conditional funding, conditional on having that final awards. And so we're doing our best this year to increase the timeline so that it allows time in May for contracts and for discussions and in June, and that we will have contracts signed well in advance of our July 1st start. And so thanks for that, Jody. And also our funding sources, as you can see from the overview packet, have some restrictions to them. Not every funding source can be used to support each program. And so there is a lot of thought and process that has to go into funding the different programs and from what eligible funds. You do not have to worry about the money that you're applying for, where it's coming from. That is that's the work of our team and the funders team to be able to do that. So we don't want that to be tripped up. Again, it's in the overview where we explain it so that you're knowledgeable about funding sources, but it is something for us to work on. And as we think about our funding team, I just want to give a shout out that we have two representatives from United Way who's joining us today, Izar Ashraf and also Julie Kennedy. And we are glad that they're here and representing United Way. United Way is a contributor. The funds that they dedicate to this process helps us leverage $750,000 from the federal government. If we did not have the investment of United Way, we would not be able to get those funds. We would have to seek out and piecemeal community funds to be able to leverage the money coming in from HUD. And so just a shout out and a great thank you. We want to go into scoring, and we will just kind of do a cursory overview of saying, you know, as you're thinking about applying for this application, you might be saying, well, you know, how is this all going to be scored? How is the review committee going to be looking at this? And I'll tell you that last year we shared more and more about, you know, really looking at the data. So we're going to be taking, there's a minimum of 3 different areas that we're focusing on. And for the sake of transparency, we want to let you know your application is going to be really important. Your application, the data that you put in the application, the information you put in, the clarity that you provide. You'll also see that the budget this year is extremely simple. Pendulum swinging the other way. And so we're making it simple, making it easier for you. It should not be as time consuming as you've seen in the past. But the budget is also critical to be realistic as possible. Second, we need to consider program performance measures. Those that are contracted with the Office for the Coalition, you know exactly what we're talking about. And we continue to share more and more about how we're providing this uniformity and how programs are run and how they're measured for success and for impact. And here's a shameless plug for our standards and procedures that were approved by the steering committee in September of 2023. The standards and procedures here in Lancaster say how we are doing business in Lancaster County as it relates to homelessness response system. And if you're saying standards, I'm not sure I know what the standards are. You can find them on our website. And maybe Beth, you can kind of put the link in there in the chat if you don't mind. We're going to continue to hone in on those standards. The standards are so important. So we're also going to be looking at the engagement, your engagement and the performance, and including the monthly meetings with our data team and how we are working in moving the bar forward and addressing the needs under an extremely stressful time. I get it. We understand challenges, and we're working towards addressing those by increasing opportunities for the service providers for all of you. So at this point, contract expectations, and I hand this off to Marjorie, right?
Yes, you do. Thank you very much. Contract expectations. It sounds like a really big word that could be scary. And what does it mean? It revolves around the items that we have expectations set for. It's an easy concept in that way. So what are some of them? Attend the biannual HUD required continuum of care meetings. Those are the ones that have been happening at Clipper Magazine Stadium. And I believe the next one in April, Beth can help me correct if I'm wrong here, is happening at BHGS location. We'll provide the address and the times for you. Adhere to the COC prioritization policy. Right now, that prioritization policy is part of our standards and procedures. That is something we're going to be looking at updating over the course of the next year. We'll make sure to include individuals in that conversation as it goes on. Aligned to the current PA 510 Continuum of Care standards and procedures, that document is accessible from our website. If you need a copy just sent to you, please feel free to reach out to one of us and we'll get it emailed to you right away. Minimize Empower Lancaster data quality errors. This is something that we reach out with from Christopher each month, and it really has made a change in how we understand what homelessness looks like in Lancaster County, and more importantly, the work that all of you are doing. Participate in program-specific meetings. This is an opportunity where the providers come together and they're sharing what is working and also what might not be working. It's a real collaboration. We also have families or individuals that may transition to a rural area of the county to the city. They still need a connection point So building those relationships amongst the providers helps to create that space for what we might call a warm handoff. Pathways is the greatest example of a program that I can say where this collaboration has really turned out to benefit the individuals that are experiencing homelessness across our county. It's a group of the providers coming together to talk about what the needs are that they see and how they can address them, working to the same end goal. Extend services during winter-related emergencies. That's something we're experiencing right now. We're in a code blue at this time. So we're asking providers at that point, what are you able to do? If you have a day center, are you able to keep it open a few more hours? If you have an overnight shelter, are people able to stay inside for a little bit longer in the morning? If you have an area that is geographically located, can you accept individuals from other areas of the county to your shelters? And bill for services through Neighborly. Beth is a great advocate for this area. If there's any other questions that you need help with, she's always there to provide support. Thank you. I'll turn it back over to Deb.
Yeah, so data is extremely important, and we are so glad that Christopher is with our team, has been with us for a year, really doing a deep dive into the data. The data is helping us drive decisions that we make. Prince Street Community Hub is a great example. Extended shelter for individuals is another example. So Christopher, why don't you take us through data expectations?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Christopher Thomas. I am a data compliance analyst with the Office for the Coalition. So I'll speak briefly about data and the Empower Lancaster system. Those of you who have already been contracted through joint funders should be familiar with Empower Lancaster, but we'll take a few minutes to talk about it just to make sure that we're all on the same page. So Empower Lancaster is the local version of our HMIS. HMIS stands for Homeless Management Information System. We're required to use an HMIS to capture data about clients in HUD-funded programs. We're also very strongly encouraged to use HMIS to capture data about clients in all homeless service programs, regardless of their funding source. Empower Lancaster is a piece of browser-based case management software. So it runs in a browser window, usually Chrome or Firefox. Lets us track client information, program enrollments, capture HUD-required data points, things like homeless status, disability status, program exit destination. We also use it to track client services, which includes client financial assistance, also bed nights of shelter. Other things here, such as move-in dates and dates of engagement, these are going to be program specific, right? So how it looks is going to vary by program. But that's something for us to worry about later. So the other thing is it lets us coordinate services by sharing information across the system. So it means that with only a few exceptions, all organizations using Empower Lancaster are able to see what all other organizations are doing. They can see case notes, client enrollments, all that information is shared across the system. So we are better able to coordinate services, hopefully have fewer silos across the county. All these contracts, joint funders contracts, will specify exactly what the expectations are for your use of Empower Lancaster. There'll be contract appendices that describe data input requirements, as well as data reporting requirements. The objective is to have everything described as clearly as possible for everyone to ensure that when we're called on to report on homeless services in Lancaster County, whether that's to HUD, the state, county, or Lancaster City, we have all the data that we need for those programs. The other objective through these contracts is to standardize the data we're taking by program type across the county. So a good example of this would be chronic homeless status. Historically, Lancaster County has done an uneven job of capturing clients' chronic homelessness status because our use of these HUD assessments has not been standardized, right? So contracts give us an opportunity to get in writing what all the expectations are for what data will be captured with these reporting benchmarks in mind. You can see some of them on screen right now. Housing inventory count is coming up very soon. LSA, the longitudinal systems analysis, we're still working through it. System performance measures are coming up. These are all the ways that we communicate to HUD, and other funding partners, what the status of Lancaster County's homeless system and client base is. And then it goes beyond that too. So this also having high quality data for those benchmarks means that we've got good information to seek additional grant funds, whether from HUD or other sources. And then from your perspective, and you can forward to the next slide, Deb or Beth, this is going to come down to, obviously in addition to the work being done and the data being entered, regular reporting from funded partners on a monthly basis, giving standard reports based upon program type. Those will be submitted via Neighborly being like the monthly portal that a lot of this stuff goes into. And the other component of that is what you see on your screen right now. That's a qualitative aspect. Stories from the field that we rely on providers to gather, right, and to report back to us. And this gives us, a base of qualitative information that we can, again, use to describe the work we're doing here. And then that satisfies both our existing funders, HUD being the biggest one, and also helps us to seek additional funding from other sources. A lot of this will make more sense. Those of you who haven't seen Empower Lancaster before, when you've seen the system and you've used it, right? So the last thing I'll say here is that we don't just say, here's your contract and find a way to fulfill it, right? We will train you every step of the way in terms of how to use Empower Lancaster, how to perform reports out of Empower Lancaster. All of these things get handled with this office and me in particular as the lead, right? So it makes a lot more sense when you can see it. And that goes for both Empower Lancaster and also the reporting that we're talking about here. Thanks.
That's great, Christopher. Thanks so much. So we're going to go into questions. I think, Jody, you want to facilitate this. I would you can't see hands that come up, so maybe people can come either live with their video and ask a question, or you can monitor the chat as well.
Okay. So I'm looking through the chat and I see one question from Bree at Echoes. Bree, would you mind asking that verbally and coming on camera? Are you still with us?
Yeah.
All right.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My paper's covered. Okay. So I know specifically I'm asking about our enrichment center, which functions a bit like a drop-in center or a day center. So we have historically served a pretty broad demographic there, ranging from people who are housing insecure and all the way into literally homeless. I've known that we were kind of trending in this direction. So proactively, we started tracking internally those who are literally homeless, those who are housing insecure, and those who are housed. But if we have a situation like that where there's a program that serves a broad demographic, are we still able to apply for funding, or would it be recommended not to do so? Is there partial funding available for that?
Yeah, I'll start and I'll ask Deb to back me up. Yes, we can fund part of a program that serves our target population. If you are tracking the data, I mean, that's only going to help you justify the need for serving the folks that we can serve. So I think yes is my answer. Deb, do you have anything to add to that?
Mm-hmm. I think one thing that you all need to know is that we are actively looking for additional funds that can supplement joint funding. So while we're at 1.59 million right now, we are pursuing additional funds that would come in. So if in doubt, apply.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then one last question, one question just came in. Jennifer, do you want to come on screen, or do you want me to, Jennifer Melichik, or do you want me to read from your chat? Okay, well, I will read from the chat. Yes, a separate application is required for any project that you are looking to gain funding from this process. Oh, that's fine, Jennifer. So you only have to do a separate application in Neighborly, the application itself. Any of the documentation that we're asking about your organization only has to be submitted once into the portal. And hopefully that answered your question.
I think you need to do it for each one, Jody, or it's not going to, because there's required documents. So
oh, I see. Okay,
Neighborly will
how it's
not
set up.
allow it
Yeah.
to-
Okay, thank you for that correction. So keep your documents handy, because you'll have to upload them for both. If you're doing two projects, you will need to upload all the required documentation so that Neighborly will accept your application as complete. Yeah, okay. Any other questions? Feel free to turn on your cameras and ask them. Yeah. All right. So this is not your last opportunity to ask any questions, so don't feel any pressure if you didn't think of something that you want to ask a question for moving forward. Refer again to your overview packet for the dates, times, and links to the open office hours, and I'd be glad to help you flesh those questions out and then share the information with the community on our website.
Becky has a question too.
Okay, hi, Becky.
Thainer.
Hi.
Friends. I have a question regarding the presentation of the Prince Street Community Hub. There were some things with that I know that you guys were working through regarding the clientele that you were going to accept into that. Is there anything that can be told about neighbors that have special offenses when we're looking to apply for day center funding? Anyone that would be excluded from services at the Prince Street Hub?
Deb, I'm gonna let that be. Yeah.
So Becky, just make sure I'm tracking with you, and that is, are there going to be eligibility requirements for individuals coming in to access day center? No, it's anticipated at this time that it will be open to individuals who are in need. Whether we need to change that protocol as we move forward with working with different providers and things of that nature, we will have to cross that bridge when we get to it. We are at the point of issuing construction bids. So while we're thinking about programming, we are not there yet in having like discussions with who is going to be providing services. So part of the joint funding process feeds into that. And so we will be entering into those conversations.
Right, not necessarily even a question of who's providing services. It's when we are as providers applying for day center services, with what the presentation that you gave, that day center will be, everyone will be eligible to come into that day center location.
Are you talking
So-
about, Becky, I'm trying to, are you talking about the proximity to like schools or other locations and perhaps having to, look at offenders' records and see if they could
That's
be-
correct. Yes.
Okay.
Is that something that, are we looking at other day centers provider being unique to what the services of what you're going to be providing at the Prince Street Hub? Just not sure how to apply if what you're presenting is that will be the day center option.
Mm-hmm. I think the best way of handling this, Becky, is to be able to say, hey, apply. If anyone is interested in offering day center services, right? And with an eye on midstream, mid-year, that it being transferred down to the Prince Street Hub, then apply. Because those applicants and those are going to be part of the discussion of how we're going to mold the program. right? Because this is a program that's going to be fed into by the coalition. It is not necessarily just the redevelopment authority or the redevelopment fund designing the program. It's us. It's the coalition going to be designing the program to meet the needs that we see fit while also ensuring safety as best as possible. And so you'll be invited at the table to help mold that program when we get to that point, if that helps.
Sure, thank you.
Good. Any other questions come up? I don't think so. What do you think, Jody? Good. Oh, you're muted.
I have not seen any additional questions. One last opportunity to speak up during this meeting. Otherwise, we'll close out the question and answer period for just this meeting. Again, referring you back to my to office hours for providers. Okay.
Great. I'm glad you put it in the little plug about the office hours. We really want to make time available to answer questions. You do not have to RSVP for those office hours. They're in the overview with hyperlinks that go right to joining the meeting. Get them in your calendar. You don't have to come to all of them. It's just meant, hey, we want to have a time where you can pop in and ask some questions. There'll be 2 from our team that will be here. We may not have that answer for you on the spot, but we will diligently get that back to you. And but we wanted to make sure that we're available. The other avenue we have is through the question and answer portal. So as the overview says, you'll send your questions to Jody. If you have a question, she'll be able to answer that, but we'll put it up on the website so that everyone has access to the questions, right? And to the answers. And so again, just trying to streamline this as much as possible. I'm not going to show our slide. I just want to say the next slide that we have here real quick was just about trainings. Just a reminder that we have dedicated the past year at having monthly trainings, training and equipping series. One is happening again tomorrow at 9 o'clock at the Public Safety Building on human trafficking, and that is our training and equipping trainings are competency builders, and that's how we look at it. Being able to increase your toolbox with skill sets that will help you to be able to work with individuals of certain different populations or other criteria. We also have Christopher, who quarterly is going to be focusing on data and helping to kind of increase our competencies as a system as it relates around data and importance there. The second training that we offer bi-monthly, it's the Homelessness Service Provider Network, HSPN, and it's our office and facilitated also with the Parish Resource Center with Kate Good, and that is to education. That's the focus of that, education. We have different providers that come and they share about their services so that you can make appropriate referrals over to their services. And so that is going to be held Monday. It's coming up Monday on 2:30. And Beth just sent out an email yesterday talking about the lineup that we have coming up on a Monday. So if you're interested in either of those and you're like, oh, I haven't heard about this yet, Beth, would you mind just putting your email in the chat? I think everybody has Beth's email from the reminders that came about today, but contact Beth and she will make sure that you get connected. Okay, agency updates. I know we're at 10:27, but just wanting to make a space for any updates that you wanted to share. We still have 36 people on this Zoom. 5 had to drop off. And if somebody could also check the chat and see if there were updates that were put in the chat. So please share any agency updates. If you have availability in your program that you want to share, if you have something coming up that you want to share for the good of the cause, please jump in there and share.
Well, I just want to direct everybody to the chat. There were 2 updates, organizational updates that were provided prior to some folks having to leave. One is from the YWCA They are starting construction on expanding their housing capacity, and their plan is to start construction in the next 2 months. Also, their shelter is currently full. And then Chad Martin from Chestnut Housing, also starting construction. How exciting, all this construction going on, and breaking ground on the Milburn apartments on Rockland Street in the city. And they also wanted to share that they recently added CrossNet Ministries as a partner to provide referrals and case management support for their housing units. So awesome. Anybody else? And I see Patricia just updated us on 211 happening, that they're not going to be doing any chart screenings on February 9th because they're having a 211 day. And then the calls will be answered that they're getting from colleagues in other 211 centers across the state. All right. Beth.
All right, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. We are so glad we made it through this presentation without any glitches. We were a little worried in the beginning. Thank you for all that you do. And we're looking forward to further collaboration together. All right. Be safe and take care.